You're listening to the UnSafe Bible with Pastor Ken Brown.
Nahum tells us that because of Nineveh's sin, they're like a prostitute is going to be forced to walk the streets so that the city can throw filth at them. They're so universally hated, and this is the thing we have to remember. Everybody hates Assyria. They all do. And what he's saying is that I'm not going to be able to find anybody to want to give you mercy. No one. In fact, the picture is one of revulsion, that those who are looking on Nineveh as they're being shamed can't stand it. They can't stand to watch it happen.
God's judgment is real, and it's coming. When we refuse to turn toward God and the forgiveness He offers, judgment becomes unavoidable. That's what happened in the time of the prophet Nahum, when the nation of Assyria remained proud and unrepentant. So God brought them down. Today, Pastor Ken offers you a sober reminder. Judgment isn't just a past reality, it's a future one. Now's your time to turn to God, to receive His mercy, while it's still being offered. Well, let's join Pastor Ken in the book of Nahum, chapter 3, as he continues his message, The Art of the Lie.
Point 3, looking at verse 1, woe to the bloody city, completely full of lies and full of pillage. Her prey does not leave. The Hebrew word translated as pillage is the word parech. It means a parting of the ways or plunder. And when it says plunder, it means that which is snatched away. So when you include the term for plunder and you include prey with it, what you're seeing is these are people who profiteer, and they profiteer by victimizing others, and they do this as a way of life. Theft is an acceptable form of life in their culture. Both terms together suggest a forced ripping of a person or possessions, just like a wild beast shredding its prey. This is what the Assyrians are doing to their victims. This is what they do to get ahead in business. Now, our Western cultures turn this into a fine art. First of all, we train people to know how to do this. It's called marketing. I'm not saying everybody who takes marketing classes is learning how to lie, but that's an element. We disguise plundering others with new terms. We call it inflation, taxes, the increased cost of doing business, or in one case that I'm still upset about, why do my corn chips cost 100% more than they did a year ago? I never knew eggs would be a luxury item, but they are. It's called plunder. That's what's going on. People want their piece of the pie, and they're willing to do whatever it's necessary to take it from you and from me. This is no better than what was going on in Nineveh. Nahum has outlined the problem in Nineveh. They kill the innocent without any regard for who they are because, hey, that helps us have stuff. Every word they say is a lie. The government lies, the business lies, the people lie, they all lie. They're all about the buck. And if you need money, just invade the country next over, kill everybody, and bring it home with you. That's how you get money. You kill your neighbor. That's what they were doing. There's a reason why everybody in the ancient world hated the Assyrians. But after all, we're talking now about the other god, Ishtar, the patron goddess of Nineveh. Isn't that what she would want? Again, these are gods who, well, they're not gods. They're fallen angels and demons. That's what's involved here. It's the enemy. That's what's happening. And they were listening to them. Their culture is built on bloodshed and deceit and can only maintain itself by continuing to grow by attacking and destroying other cities and kingdoms. They have to do that. If there's nobody to attack, then they can't grow. Their appetite for blood and plunder is insatiable. Nineveh was a great and powerful city, but God will give us His assessment of them. They think they're really good, but God says something else. So Nahum will pivot from giving us the reason why judgment's needed and necessary back to details of the judgment that's going to be coming on Nineveh. In other words, he's going to talk about what he saw when he was taken to the future. verses 2 and 3. This is him telling you what he saw or heard. The sound of the whip, the sound of the roar of the wheel, galloping horses and bounding chariots, horsemen charging, swords flashing, spears gleaming, many killed, a mass of corpses, and there's no end to dead bodies. They stumble over the dead bodies. So we go again to this eyewitness account. God transported him to the future, and now we're seeing these short, pithy statements. And I've read several commentaries where they said, well, that may not necessarily be the case, but archaeologically we found out it actually is. How did he do? Did he get it right? Yeah. Excavations that have taken place at one of the gates of Nineveh, the Halsey Gate, gives us some insight. The folks at UC Berkeley are the ones who did this excavation, and they tell us that inside the outer door, beyond the position of a hastily installed blocking stone, so they actually, elsewhere, later in Nahum, he talks about throwing up the bricks. They did. They were trying to throw up another barrier. The excavated portion of the central corridor of the gate has revealed the presence of more than a dozen persons who died a violent death as they were caught in this assault. Each one lies exactly as they fell. One sprawled face down, one on his back with his arms outstretched, another that they've determined to be a 13-year-old with arrowheads lodged in his lower legs. Numerous bronze and iron arrowheads found in the vicinity. In other words, a pile of people right there at the gate. And they've actually did photography of it all. I mean, this is a photograph of what they found at that gate. Skeletons of individuals slaughtered on the roadway in 612 BC as the Nineveh fell, just like Nahum said it was going to. The scene of carnage recalls, and these are not believers saying this, the myriads of slain and heaps of corpses referred to by Nahum. The archaeological evidence reflects that the bodies literally piled up. Not just at that gate, they found the same thing in front of all the gates. Just bodies piled up. Trying to get out, trying to escape. And there was no one there to defend them anymore. Now remember, Nahum is reporting this 90 years before the events take place. But he saw it. And there's several words he could have used for corpse. But he takes one that means a corpse that's never buried, a corpse that lies exposed. They're not in the context of being buried at all. There's no funeral process. That's the word he uses. And then we looked at that archaeology, and all I can think of is archaeology is pretty cool. It shows us that what he said actually happened. After giving us more detail of the carnage taking place, Nahum then turns back to, here's why it's happening. He knows that what he's reporting on and saying is difficult to hear. This is a side of God that exists next to his justice. And we want justice and mercy, but this is the side that's judgment. And there is no more mercy. They've reached the point where it's justice. Verse 4, all because of the many sexual acts of the prostitute, the charming one, the mistress of sorcerers, who sells nations by her sexual acts and families by her sorceries. Nineveh is compared to a prostitute. The word in the Hebrew is zonah. And here when he's using it, it's broadly used. It's not just a term of a professional term for women working in the town, and not just the trade. He's also talking about the idol cult. He's talking about the fact that they used prostitution as part of their worship. He's talking about the magic arts. He's talking about the trade, the way they conducted trade, how they prostituted themselves to get whatever they wanted. This is what it's all about. And what it means is, and here's the thing, those folks who were worshiping Ishtar is also considered a prostitute. And those who worshiped them, and the city itself was at times called, because they worshiped Ishtar, prostitutes. Among other gods, they do use sacred prostitution as part of the picture. But this is also involving merchant activities, sorcery, drug usage, magic arts, and divination. It's all involved in this. I mean, there's a real reason why God sent Jonah 100 years earlier to have them repent, and if they hadn't, they were going to be destroyed then. But they repented. But they went back to that lifestyle. In the New Testament, by the way, there is another town that is also called a prostitute. We read about it in the book of Revelation. And it's used the same terms as in Nineveh. In fact, Nineveh is being pointed to in it. This is Mystery Babylon. It's in Revelation chapter 17. The woman was dressed in purple and scarlet and covered with gold ornaments, precious stones and pearls, and in her hand she held a gold cup full of obscene and filthy things, the result of her immorality. And on her forehead was written a name that has a secret meaning, Great Babylon, the mother of all the prostitutes and perverts in the world. But the image of the harlot is taken from what is described in Nineveh and in Tyre. That's in Isaiah chapter 23, verse 15. That's where it's taken from. The truth is, the empire of the beast is conceived as embodying all the forms of evil, the worst examples of it that we see in Tyre and that we see in Nineveh. This is later used by John and, of course, Jesus, who's giving this in one of his letters, and pointed to as a type of the city of the Antichrist. So what else are we told about Nineveh that makes it stand out as a negative type of the city of man, the city of the Antichrist? Well, they're called the charming one. Now, that implies that they were really good at convincing people to do something they didn't want to do. They could put makeup on a pig and tell you that it was a good-looking lady, and you'd believe them. She would seem attractive and beautiful. They would trade Nineveh to those who needed to invest or wanted to bring money or product. We're good. We're spectacular. We're a great city. We got a lot to offer. We've got wealth. We've got goods. We've got comfort. We've got sensuality. We've got it all, but it's an illusion. Just like the Bible tells us that Mystery Babylon is going to be an illusion. It's not real. It's just not real. This prostitute is also the mistress of sorceries. It's the lies that draw people in. And the lies are so powerful, they seem like they're magic. Now, sorcery also is drug usage. We know that from studying the words connected to that in the New Testament. So there's this going on as well. There's drug usage, there's magic, there's all these different things that are connected with demon worship and false god worship. King Ahaz was actually one who got sucked in by this charm. He asked for the Assyrian Empire to help him because he had a problem. The nation of Israel and the Syrians were busy attacking him. He wanted them to go away. He didn't have an army anymore. So he asked the Assyrians to come, and he paid them some money to do that for him. So in 2 Chronicles 28, starting in verse 16, we see this. At that time, King Ahaz sent to the king of Assyria for help. The Edomites had invaded and defeated Judah and carried away captives. And the Philistines had made raids on the cities of the Sheplah and the Negev of Judah and had taken Beth Shemesh and Ajalon and Gederoth and Soko and all its villages and Timnah and Gimzo. And they settled there. For the Lord humbled Judah because of Ahaz, king of Israel, for he had made Judah act sinfully and had been unfaithful to the Lord. So Tiglath-Pileser, king of Assyria, came against him and afflicted him instead of strengthening him. He paid him money, and instead, he got attacked. Ahaz took a portion from the house of the Lord and the house of the king and of the princes and gave tribute to the king of Assyria, but it did not help him. Hezekiah did the same thing. It did not help him. He repented, though. Ahaz never did. Manasseh got sucked in, too. And, of course, Hezekiah repented. Manasseh, he got hauled off to prison. But after he repented, he came back. Stop and think about the level of subjugation being subjected against Israel for that to happen. The Lord brought upon them the commanders of the army of the king of Assyria, who captured Manasseh with hooks, bound him with chains of bronze, and brought him to Babylon. That's where they kept their prisoners. And when he was in distress, he entreated the favor of the Lord his God and humbled himself greatly before the God of his fathers. He prayed to him, and God was moved by his entreaty, heard his plea, and brought him again to Jerusalem into his kingdom. Then Manasseh knew the Lord was God. Manasseh repented, but he'd spent 50 years doing crazy stuff. So we come back to the supernatural source of this problem. Ishtar is the patron deity of the city of Nineveh. Ishtar was worshipped as a prostitute, and prostitution was used as part of that. So that the specific accusation may be that Nineveh subjects to all of its nations, the way they subject the nations that they use, and then use them up and just throw them away, just like a prostitute would. So that could be part of it too. Assyria set aside any morality. They practiced political prostitution. They sold the military for money. They did that with Ahaz, and then they took the money and did what they wanted to anyhow. They enticed poor, weak nations to ally with them. And we see that going on today. We know there are some countries around the world that are using poor, weak nations. They ally with them, say, we'll take care of you. Just sign right here and give us all your stuff. Oh, and let us build this and this and this and this and use you as a base for this and all of that. By the way, we did the same thing. They practiced sacred prostitution in their religious rituals. For the goddess Ishtar, they used a form of political sorcery to attract allies, and they relied on sorcery and superstition for guidance. Not good people. They are not the wonderful, beautiful city that they pretended to be. They're just nothing more than a prostitute. And they beguiled others to make money and to lead people to destruction. And they preyed on the weakness of others, and they knew exactly how to do it. This is why Nineveh is a last times picture of the capital city of the beast. You want to know what the mystery Babylon is going to be like, what the capital of the beast is going to be like, it's going to be like Nineveh. Now, God's view is this, verse 5. Behold, I'm against you, declares the Lord of armies. I will lift up your skirts over your face, and I will show the nations your nakedness and the kingdoms your shame. I will throw filth on you and declare you worthless and set you up as a spectacle. And it will come about that all who see you will shrink from you and say, Nineveh is devastated. Who will have sympathy for her? Where shall I seek comforters for you? In the Middle East at this time period, if the culture thought adultery was bad or prostitution was bad, not all of them did, but if the culture condemned it, the way that they would deal with someone involved in that is they'd strip all their clothes off and make them walk through the center of town, naked. That's the way they did it. They would expose them to shame and ridicule. God is against them. And we also know, thanks to Ezekiel, that they are at the head of the line of shame and dishonor on their way to hell. I mean, again, they show up in Sheol and they're handed a shovel and say, dig deeper. That's kind of the picture. They're going to be treated as an adulteress and as a prostitute. That's what the Lord's going to do. They're going to be exposed to all the surrounding nations as a fraud. Nothing is going to be hidden. Everything's going to be open to view, which means those secret records and those secrets that they had, they're not secret anymore. Anything that you thought was top secret, it's not top secret. Everybody's going to read it. Everybody's going to know about it. I mean, unfortunately, I guess they took some of it away because some of the stuff we find in the excavation and in the archaeological finds include bar bills for all the beer they bought. And I'm not kidding. That is some of the stuff we find. But the idea here is public humiliation. Nahum tells us that because of Nineveh's sin, they're like a prostitute is going to be forced to walk the streets so that the city can throw filth at them. They're so universally hated, and this is the thing we have to remember. Everybody hates Assyria. They all do. And what he's saying is that I'm not going to be able to find anybody to want to give you mercy. No one. In fact, the picture is one of revulsion, that those who are looking on Nineveh as they're being shamed can't stand it. They can't stand to watch it happen. It's all so deserving, they just turn their head and walk away. As they metaphorically parade down the street, those in attendance turn away and look someplace else because they're just so revolted even by the sight. No one is going to mourn the fall of Assyria. By the way, historically, nobody did. No one will comfort them because they made themselves abominable to everyone. Assyria showed no mercy when in power, and at the end they would receive no mercy, and they would reap what they sowed. There's a document called the Succession Treaty of Esarhaddon that talks about how they're going to leave people who they curse. This is what the Assyrians do, and this is what happened to the Assyrians. And I love what it says. May your ghost have no one to care for him or pour libations. That's pretty serious. Nahum does a good job nailing the culture of Nineveh and letting us know just why judgment is coming to the city. But we need to take notice of this here in the West. Dr. J. Vernon McGee kind of tied it together, and he did so back in the 90s. And he says this, all of this description which is given here is something I do not want to pass over lightly because it has such a tremendous application for us today and is such an apt picture of the present day. The book of Nahum reveals God's method in dealing with the nations of the world. I don't think he's changed his method. And if he hasn't, we're in trouble. And I mean deep trouble, my friend. Again, he's writing in the 90s. We ought to be praying for our nation. God calls this city a harlot, saying that he is absolutely going to display all the shame and filth and vileness of this great civilization and make it a gazing stock, a spectacle to the world. And that's the way the Assyrian Empire actually ended. I mean, it really did end that way. I'm reminded of what it says in Malachi 3:6. For I, the Lord, do not change. Therefore you, O children of Jacob, have not perished. And when you study that, you find out that they were deserving of it, but God loved them. Why are we still here? Well, it gets down to a negotiation that Abraham had with God when he said, how many will you spare the city for, Lord? For 50? And then the Lord said, yeah, for 50 I won't destroy Sodom and Gomorrah. I wonder what kind of conversations Abraham would be having today on our behalf. Verse 8 of Nahum 3, are you better than No Ammon? That's a way of saying a city. The city is the name No, and it's the city of Ammon, who is a god, happened to be the god of Thebes, Egypt. So they're talking about Thebes. So he's saying, are you better than Thebes, which was situated by the canals of the Nile with water surrounding her, whose rampart was the sea, whose wall consisted of the sea. Ethiopia was her might, Egypt too without limits. Put and Luban were among her helpers, yet she became an exile and she went into captivity. Also her small children were smashed to pieces at the head of every street. They cast lots for her honorable men, and all her great men were bound with shackles. No Ammon, again, is the city of Ammon, an Egyptian god. It's Thebes, and God's going to compare Nineveh to Thebes, and the reason why he's going to do it is Assyria is the one that conquered Thebes. They're the ones that did this. The description is what they did. Now, Thebes is the capital of Egypt's upper kingdom. It's about 400 miles north of Cairo on the Nile River, and it kind of went downhill a little bit in the 1700 to 1500s BC, but it was still the capital of that portion of Egypt when they were attacked by Assyria. And it was the center of worship for the god Ammon. And that's what Thebes kind of looks like today. I mean, there's Karnak is there. There's some portion of it on the east side, but most of it's on the west side of the Nile. So this is going to be very personal in what he's saying. It's ironic because Nahum is talking to the city, to the people who actually conquered Thebes in 663 BC. These are the ones who did it. Nahum is going to remind the citizens of Nineveh what they did to Thebes when Ashurbanipal took the city back in 663.
Thanks for tuning into today's edition of the UnSafe Bible with Pastor Ken Brown. Pastor Ken has been teaching us about the book of Nahum. Now, Nahum tells us about the coming fall of Assyria, a nation that oppressed its neighbors and brought violence and destruction on those who got in their way. Now, if you look at the world today, you'll see plenty of world powers exploiting smaller nations and subjecting people to slavery and oppression. What the Lord warns in the book of Nahum is that justice will come around one day, and even the mightiest of the nations of man will come crashing down like a sandcastle at high tide. God will not let brutality and oppression go on forever, because He is a God who cares for the broken and the weak. Well, if you've liked what you've heard from today's message, we'd love to invite you to visit us online at the unsafebible.com. While you're there, click on the Connect tab so that we can get to know you better. If you happen to find yourself in Hobe Sound, Florida, you can also join us in person for a service at Calvary Chapel, Martin County. You'll find information about our services on our website. You can also find a list of past messages from Pastor Ken so that you can catch up on any broadcasts you may have missed. Well, these shorter books of Scripture are just as important to us today as they were to their original audience thousands of years ago. We hope you'll join us again as Pastor Ken keeps bringing God's Word to life for us, and we continue to travel through this book we call the UnSafe Bible.